Welcome to the Marketing Society Sustainability Squad podcast, leading the conversation on ESG.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Marketing Society Sustainability Squad podcast series, leading the conversation on ESG. My name is Abdul Rahim and I'm your host for today. Hosted out of the UAE, the podcast was designed to bring together a group of members to help drive change around ESG, helping to curate high-quality content in the UAE's year of sustainability. We want to educate and inspire the Marcoms community to drive change around ESG and sustainability. We also want to put the Marketing Society at the heart of the sustainability conversation for marketeers in the build-up to COP28 and truly lead the conversation for the industry. Today, I'm pleased to be joined by Dan Dimmock, and we shall be diving into perspectives from brands being purpose-led and the creative industry. Dan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for making time. Dan is actually a cultural and institutional brand architect, an impact strategist, fractional CBO, advisor, and educator. Best known for his work as a consultant, Dan has been championing purpose-driven brand development as a vehicle for change over the last 2 decades and has built a career helping public and private sectors leaders improve self-awareness and empower organizational transformation through brand clarity, higher purpose, and measurable impacts. In 2015, Dan co-founded First Water Advisory, a specialist strategy and execution consultancy focused on building sustainable brands in underserved markets. Before establishing First Water, Dan led teams for 2 of the world's leading consultancies, Fitch and Future Brand, where he held key leadership positions across the Middle East and Asia-Pacific regions. Dan is also the creator of the Brand Clarity Assessment Effectiveness Framework and the Sustainable Brand Model Canvas. Furthermore, regularly commenting on issues shaping business and brand, his perspectives have been featured in Arabian Business, Branding Strategy Insider, CNN, Fast Company, the Financial Times, and the New York Times. He's an outside lecturer at Middlesex University's Institute for Sustainable Development, Strathclyde Business Schools, and other forums. He also serves as a business subject matter expert to business accelerator programs and advisory to board members to impact-driven startups. Dan, a great title and very and many perspectives you'll be able to share around being purpose-led. So thank you for making the time today.
Pleasure.
Dan, you have a very unique view, as we've talked about this for a while, around brand and the function of brands. So enlighten us.
Well, not sure it's unique, but it is a perspective that's born from a genuine passion for wanting to understand how brands are defined, measured and managed, as well as the role that brands play in helping leaders broaden their understanding of value, particularly as we go into value-based economies, and in helping people ultimately make better, more informed decisions. And I'll put some context and some clarity around that, which is that every day, as human beings, we make decisions, everyday decisions about the brands that we invite into our lives. They inform our choice of toothpaste, they ensure the clothes we wear, the car we drive, or in fact the brands that we don't want to engage with. Now, that's really powerful stuff. And when you times that level of power around conscious consumerism and the influence that it has on people making the right everyday decisions, when a brand is powered by a higher authority, a higher purpose or reason for being, then brands can have the power to influence those decisions, which in turn influence the world around us. We'll make better, more informed decisions that are guided by those brands. Now, given its genus and gravitas, when brand is dealt with as a function or a utility of marketing, it's my belief that sustainability is potentially held hostage, right? Now, if you compare, a very simple comparison here is if you compare the world's top 10 media spenders against the top 10 worst polluting companies and corporations in the world through single-use plastic, as one example, you'll see a clear connection between the two, right? So what this does is it highlights the reality perception gap. So you asked me my perspective on brand is that I see brand as beyond perception, and that brand has the key to actually influence reality into the world and through measurable outcomes. And brands that bridge the gap basically are delivering on the promise that they put into the world to make the world a better place, right? And a company is fully and passionately committed to sustainability. When the companies are fully and passionately committed to sustainability, they strike a balance between shareholder return and the expectations from a commercial benefit of the company, profit, and societal impact, purpose, right? Brands that don't, brands that talk but don't do the walk, they're purpose washing, okay? And generally that is signaled by reactive marketing activity, promotional inconsistencies, and basically reputation crisis is imminent for those organizations.
So effectively what you're trying to say, and summarizing some of what you've really walked us through in great detail, is it needs to be a function of the organization, not a function of marketing, if you're going to go behind purpose.
I'd go a little bit further than that and say brand is a leadership imperative. Because brand, if you think about the stakeholders that are engaged with by an organization, it's not just the consumers. It's employees, R&D departments, innovation departments, it could be sales, finance, marketing. Every one of those departments and operations within an organization is effectively communicating with somebody on the outside world in one way or another. The business itself has an impact on people that don't necessarily buy the product. So this is really important stuff. So if brand is seen as a leadership imperative, it can help leadership broaden their understanding of value, and brand value creation in effect can be effectively implemented across the entire organization. Where marketing typically is seen as a promotional operation in order to boost the awareness and profile and increase sales and growth.
It's funny you mentioned the word growth, because we pick up on something we talked about in the last podcast, which was we've seen a shift in the industry, and in effectively marketing was thought of as being driving growth for businesses. But Forbes mentioned this as well, which is the biggest transformation we've seen in this industry is moving away from just being growth focused and being purpose and values focused. So in your humble experience, how do you see that shift manifest in the marketing function? Because you're talking about marketing and brand and that living at the leadership level. So effectively, we've had these conversations before where we talk about marketing having a seat on the executive table. Many marketeers face that challenge of getting that seat in the first place. But is it the role of a marketeer or a brand CBO, as you mentioned before, to navigate the business towards better purpose?
I think we just need to sort of think back a bit there. I think, like you say, you're just quoting the Forbes study. I think it was another recent Forbes study which asked a number of CMOs around what their role and responsibility was. And I was alarmed, I can't remember the number, but I was alarmed by the amount of CMOs who believe that they're there for growth potential. Now that raises an even bigger question, because if CMOs believed that at that particular time, then what were the CEOs thinking, right? So it's pretty much go out there and sell.
Yeah. Right.
So that connection between perception and reality, and the overall link between value and understanding truly how an organization creates value, particularly in the wider ecosystem, becomes absolutely vital and important to that. I think marketing and CMOs certainly serve a role and purpose. In fact, you see many CMOs having the responsibilities of the brand from a governance and management perspective within part of their mandate. But as we've seen with many sort of renowned brands that we are praising on a regular basis, particularly in the United States and in Europe, you do now encounter the chief brand officer.
Yeah.
And a chief brand officer is there to ensure that the continuity of the philosophy and the leadership ideals of that organization are effectively cascaded and implemented into that business, of which, like I say, marketing is part of that. Now, there's a hierarchical debate about who reports into what and where, but obviously you can't get out into the world without clear marketing. If that CBO, and obviously with sustainability and a purpose-driven hat is championing that charge, then you'd be hope to see some effective levels of implementation.
So as you've been helping brands become more self-aware around purpose and serving that higher purpose, which you just talked about, in your view, what does it mean to be a purpose-driven organization?
That's a great question. The quick, slightly utopian answer to that is clarity. I think the purpose-driven organization is one that has established a great sense of brand clarity. Now, when you think about just going back a couple of steps of what I was saying in terms of how I see brand connecting with all stakeholders within an organization in order to drive consistency and continuity of purpose and philosophy and message, then we could probably argue that brand clarity is in fact absolute clarity. So that an organization that has clarity across all its stakeholders around what it's there to do and how it does it, I think is truly what is the essence of a purpose-driven organization. But like I said, that's a slightly utopian answer, because most organizations are highly complex and incredibly complicated. So first off, if you're a purpose-driven organization, you have to have a higher purpose. Right? So if you're a purpose-driven organization, there has to be a point of reference. There has to be a North Star, as BCG would call it, right?
Yeah.
There's something that really is clearly understood and a reason for being that's beyond the economics and the commercial gain of that business, right? Purpose, I believe, provides the context between a mission of an organization and a vision. Okay, and so clarity of purpose helps to really, if you're there to deliver a solution, which is what you're there to do, then purpose provides that why element to, okay, why are we doing this? And then you start to build what's, the anatomy of a strategy, right? The what, the why, and the where are we going, right? You can start to put those measures and effectiveness elements into that. And I think that really is the context driver that helps us to connect all those dots. When you know what you do and where you're going in terms of your mission and your vision and your purpose gives clarity and context to doing that, the articulation and the manifestation of your purpose within the organization helps you to get there. And it keeps you focused. It keeps the organization focused. It means you're able to navigate very difficult, challenging times as a business by staying true to those key elements that really define you and define your philosophy as a business. And many different organizations articulate that in a different way. So some organizations are focused on being a great company.
Yeah.
Other organizations take a more moral steer towards what they're looking to accomplish. And then some organizations, particularly large conglomerate, diverse portfolio-based businesses, look to connect with people on a sense of values and trying to get the alignment around we're a values-based business and we connect with you on that meaningful level of like-mindedness. Once you've uncovered a purpose with legs that is actionable and is accountable, and that's you go through that process to do that, that's clearly aligned with your philosophy as a leader or philosophy as a business, your purpose needs to be embedded into strategy. So once you've got the higher purpose, you need a purpose-led strategy, and that's a plural. So purpose-led strategies, I think, is probably the right answer to that, of which brand strategy is obviously one of those work streams and how you bring that to life. And to stay connected, you also, like I said, you have to also connect with your with talent, future talent and employees. So therefore, how do you connect your purpose on a deeper level with these people? And so you start to see brands shifting away from what was once marketing comms messages around extrinsic motivations and extrinsic values like wealth, status, speed and power, to more intrinsic sets of values around compassion and honesty and transparency and empathy and understanding. So we're starting to see a real shift in towards those sorts of things.
It's quite funny you say that, because I remember several years ago sitting with a brand and talking about exactly what you've just said. So that really rings true at home, because of the fact that we were talking in amongst agencies around one table, talking about what does it mean to be international? What does it mean to be the value of that brand at that time? And the shift of this brand particularly has been significant towards more a higher purpose. And so that really is something that I feel marketeers should take away, is to actually say, if you have, and just to summarize some of what you said, is have a clear, defined value, higher purpose, and then define your mission and vision around that. And then effectively is having strategies formed around it. So it really helps me in my next question, which was, how do you navigate this as a business? But you've literally done that in a very summarized way. So that's...
Yeah, I mean, what we've been doing with my consulting practice is look at the key pillars and principles and indicators. And the reason I say pillars, principles and indicators is that they serve as a different role at different stages in the development of a brand. So from a pillars and a strategic alignment perspective, to principles to help inform behaviors, through to indicators to help measure the impact of your brand. So to be back to the previous question about, to be a purpose-driven organization, you have to be led by an actionable purpose. This requires obviously clarity around a strategy of how that's going to be embedded into the organization, and a good strategy obviously has got measures and reasons to believe, and all of the other key elements in order to prove that to be true.
KPIs.
OKRs, KPIs. There's got to be a series of real impactful outcomes that tick both the business requirements, but also alongside something, sustainability and impact measures, social and environmental things. But in order to do that, your communications, both internally and externally, have to be conscious, right? So think about that for a second. Conscious communications, right? So this is a style of communication that isn't selling for sales' sake. It's actually being open and thoughtful around the fact that the message you put out today can have implications that can continue to, for the inevitable time in the future. So you've got to be conscious in that. Intrinsically engaged people, as I mentioned, empathetically connected customers, but also purpose-driven organizations are agile and they're responsive. Now, to be agile and responsive, you've brand as a measurable asset and tool within an organization has got to have management policies, investment, and it's got to be focused on and embedded into that organization and seen as being what we in the industry like to say the most valuable asset. Well, it's absolutely true if that is key in place. What's also really important to say is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to building a purpose-driven organization. But there is one thing that's true of all purpose-driven organizations, and that is the realization that in one way or another, every single business activity either creates or diminishes value. And that's really important. That leads us into thinking about self-awareness, right? Organizations need to be self-aware. They need to understand that actually the impact that they have on people may not necessarily be the person who's bought the product. It could be somebody further down the supply chain that they haven't even considered or thought about. And that interrogation of the value chain becomes absolutely imperative in terms of helping to inform and grow lasting equity and association, and to some extent survival in the future economy.
Future-proofing.
Just
to use another phrase of jargon, you can't have a marketing podcast without that kind of jargon. I'll take all the jargon that we have to include in a marketing podcast, but I think the one I'd like to change personally, I'm going to change is the one from KPIs to impactful outcomes. So my next slides will have impactful outcomes instead of KPIs.
Then we've achieved something brilliant today.
So is it really proactive from your side in terms of your consultancy practice? Is it you going to existing clients that you have and working with them proactively, navigating them towards a higher purpose? Or are brands more so coming to you and asking for this?
So very good question. We have various dimensions to our consulting practice. So we work directly with clients.
Yeah.
We have an advisory element which provides brand leadership coaching. Let's go back a second. So we have a multi-dimensional consultancy offer where we have tools that have been created for small businesses and small enterprises. We've got leadership and advisory services that we can provide to boards, to key decision makers. We've also got an extensive methodology which takes the brand transformation process and defines a series of activities, all that result in clear deliverables that brings that forward. We also focus quite a bit on education. So I am very fortunate to have been invited to speak at a number of business schools and universities, and also contribute writing to some key publications. So in a roundabout way, to answer that question, we use some of these initiatives in order to educate and share our perspectives.
Yeah.
And then when clients come to us, we like to think that they've already got a good, decent sense of self-awareness, and that they are looking at ways in which they can uncover their purpose and then unleash it into the world through effective design, experience creation, marketing communications, and various other sorts. So we sort of tackle it in that way. But most of our clients will come to us for that particular reason, knowing that we can help them and support that. We also provide advisory support services in terms of connecting social and environmental impacts to the outcome of that brand strategy as well. So that's
Dan, for example, if I'm a marketeer sitting in any organization right now and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, what's my first steps apart from going on your website and clicking contact us? Where do we start this? Do we navigate our stakeholders first? Do I go to my CMO, my CBO, my CEO? Because I want it to be something tangible that marketeers at all levels of marketing can take away from this. What would you recommend to be your first step in this?
Again, another great question. We, of course, get inquiries from marketeers at all levels who have been asked to find a partner who has the right methodologies and values in order to help drive and grow a business. Where possible, we can't control every brief that comes to us, but where possible, we always go back and ask this fundamental question, which is, are leadership in alignment with the project that you're tendering for, that you're briefing? Okay, because if they're not, then unfortunately we're just unable to do that. It's a leadership brand creation, development, building is a leadership imperative, and so as part of our overall sort of philosophy and point of view around that, it becomes key. So that marketeer has, even the organization itself has got to have allowed marketing the ability to influence leadership decisions. If not, and it's seen as a promotional outcome, then unfortunately it's not. So
get the license.
Yeah, we have to. We can only really do these things when an initiative has been sponsored from the very top of an organisation.
Brilliant. And then on the spectrum, on a reverse end of that spectrum, many brands, I would say, are nervous of backlash, being labelled as greenwashing, and purpose washing, as you referenced. So, for me, when we're talking about COP28, we're talking about commitments for several years, and commitments for this year, and commitments for next year, and longer term strategies 2030, 2050. What I feel is that we shouldn't lack the passion or the willingness to take that first step on fear of, I was reading the other day talking about having, crisis communications ready and being more ready for crisis communications because of back of COVID and many other things that could happen. But in that respect, to ask a question is, so what would you say to marketeers who fear the negative backlash and all the effort that will go into that?
So in the same way that, we want marketeers to have the sponsorship of the, of leadership within their organization, in order to avoid in order to mitigate the likelihood of being tarnished as a purpose washer or green washer, whatever it may be, there has to be measurable outcomes, right? There has to be justification. You've got to, the promise and purpose that you're putting out into the world has got to be materialized, right? It's got to be made very real. So the best way to do that from a marketing perspective is if the initiative is being championed by marketing, or if it's being championed by elsewhere in a business, then getting as many of your stakeholders who are part of that journey to becoming a better organization together and involved in the transformation or transition of your organization is absolutely vital. So give you some examples. So many organizations are focusing currently on their sustainability vision in the lead up to COP, right? So COP is great, but it's also caused a number of slow movers to really start upping the game and thinking about it. So lots of appointments of either sustainability leaders or the mandates being added to someone else within the organization, usually communications. Now, whether that comes from there, it comes from somewhere else, or marketing and the influence of data has come back and said, look, guys, we've got a real problem here. We need to start doing something. It's got to connect, right? You've got to bring key stakeholders. So I guess the argument is that it doesn't matter whether marketing's leading the charge or sustainability is leading the charge or HR are leading the charge, but there has to be some cohesion against all of the different operations of the business. Then, when marketing is putting that message out there and it's got support and sponsorship from leadership, but it's also bottom up, top down, inside out, outside in, then the chances of being tarnished with as a greenwasher are mitigated.
So it's about taking action and getting that license, having, impactful outcomes ready, having the buy-in from the business or your all functions of your business effectively, and then navigating this in the right way. And actually, this leads quite nicely to another concept, which in your publications you mentioned, is about sustainability gives organizations more opportunities to be more creative. And I think that's a lovely quote. And so, can you elaborate on that for us a little bit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, in different markets, different industries, some industries are embracing sustainability. Some are being forced to embrace sustainability, right? And there's a real mindset shift, and transition and change, particularly in developing markets.
Yep.
What this comes down to is I guess you can exist on two planes, right? You can either be focused on short-term results, which means all you're doing is adhering to the pressures of sustainability as a license to operate, right? So your business would be characterized as just fulfilling your legal requirements. There'll be a very limited PR effort in order to do that, right? Now, when you start embedding sustainability and thought processes or the notion of sustainability into your organization, and then you start, and it begins with purpose, obviously, you can use your purpose and use sustainability as a lens to improve the experience that people have. And when you start thinking like that, you're innovating. So, for example, you may be a bank. For example, you may have a consumer app, and you may be wondering why there's a big drop in the usage of the app or the engagement of the app. Start to look through the lens of sustainability, engaging with your stakeholders, getting those insights, and start looking at the elements and functions of that app. And once you do that and start using your brand as a lens in order to innovate, you'll find new ways in which to bring that experience to life and that's just one example. You're also seeing when you embrace sustainability and you're in changing industries, for example, energy being one, then sustainability gives you an opportunity to look at your entire value chain. It looks at the entire processes that you go through and helps you to position yourself, and like I said, you mentioned earlier, future-proof. So sustainability really is a great innovator and enabler to do that. It can provide the source for new products. The portfolio shifts to long-term visibility, and it also correlates to a shift in internal performance measurement and continuous improvement and making yourself a better place. So you shift. Many businesses are in that kind of short-term results focus, who are just ticking the boxes to adhere to regulation, and then others that have really embedded sustainability into it, looking at the long-term performance. They put sustainability at the core of their operations, and they're using sustainability-driven innovation and meeting the demand and increasing demand for sustainability as a prerequisite to being in business.
It's interesting because, like the car industry, and we're seeing a lot more electronically powered vehicles and moving away from, oil-based. So basically what we're saying is, when you look at industries, some are being forced. When you look at other industries, brands can get very creative around this. So actually, how have you felt the industry has handled the ESG topic over the last few years?
Well, I want to just re-emphasize what I was just saying about long-term performance, right? Sustainability-driven innovation, all offerings aimed at meeting the demands of sustainability, access to niche markets, extension markets, creating new sub-markets within, the automobile industry, for example, right? This is because of the sustainability and increased consumer consciousness, right? And increased accountability and responsibility in terms of where you invest, where you spend your money and you spend your time and your resources. So that becomes really, really important. In terms of ESG, well, ESG is really vital and really important, and obviously increases in disclosure become absolutely vital and important. But those are and the rise of ESG is simply extending that license to operate.
Yeah.
Right. If you think about the brands that really are coming out of nowhere and really having a significant impact and change on our daily lives, these are businesses that aren't just responding to the need and regulation of disclosure. These are businesses that have embedded sustainability into their into the very business models in which they operate. So, for example, if you deep dive into any one of those businesses, and they exist in automobiles, clothing, apparel, you name it, service offerings, technology, everyday technology, they are driven, each of those businesses are driven by a purpose, a clear and compelling purpose that everyone in that organization knows and understands and brings to life on a daily basis through customer experience, but also through the products and services that come to market.
Before we were recording, you told me about how your daughter always tells you to look sideways. So now we talked about internal stakeholders navigating around a higher purpose. But when you talk about your media agency, your creative agency, how would you reflect around, is it partly their responsibility to navigate you as a brand, as a client towards this? Or is it for the brand to come together, define their higher purpose, and then go out to these agencies? Or does it happen simultaneously?
I think there's a slight issue in that there appears to be an invisible line of distinction between agencies and clients, right? And I think the most effective agencies are the ones that seamlessly connect with their clients in the best possible ways. They understand them inside and out, and actually the best relationships are where the clients actually understand their agencies inside and out. And many agencies also have a responsibility in their own industries to move forward and progress and to advance thinking. Any agency that's not doing that, particularly when you think about how important the brand is in informing our everyday decisions, is kind of irresponsible in my book. But I think it comes down to this very simple notion, which is the business of business is no longer just business, right? The business of business is also society. What this means, and this is the tongue twister, what this means is that the branding of a business has to be done responsibly, and the business of branding has to become more accountable. Okay, think about that for a second. So in answer to your question, I absolutely fundamentally think that if you are in the business of branding other businesses and knowing how important business is to solving not just everyday dilemmas and challenges that we have as consumers, but actually a greater need as humankind, then absolutely, I think every business, whatever industry you're in, should be becoming more accountable, because you are influencing people that don't necessarily pay the bills, but you are championing a cause. And again, if you're an agency and you're talking about change and purpose, but you're not implementing it or driving that forward in your own business, then I'm afraid you're purpose washing.
So yeah, Dan, I think that really drives home a couple of points that we've discussed today. One is branding to be more accountable. That goes into something that we discussed earlier, which was about impactful outcomes, and then looking at effectively brands singing from the same hymn sheet, actually businesses singing from the same hymn sheet, whichever function of the business you are, having that clarity at the top around what your higher purpose is and bringing all your stakeholders together, which I think gives a good summary of what we've discussed today. Do you think I've covered it?
I think you have. I think a passing comment is, particularly when we talk about the agency and the marketing and comms agency landscape, is that for the last 15 years we've been talking about data and how we utilize data for insight purposes. Data also means, and the availability and abundance of data means, that we can pretty much measure anything. Now, we're in a highly accountable world from a commercial and business perspective, that if agencies are to really take that investment that they put into data, in terms of capturing data in order to target their communications and messages, that actually therein lies a solution to making yourself more accountable by using that data to measure the effective performance and the impact of your work.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking about number of impressions, how many readers you've got, or anything along those the very topical lines. I'm talking about ways in which you can connect the impact of your work to changes in behavior that leads to material results and outcome. And I think that's really exciting, and I think that's really where I think is very exciting. And obviously with all the hype around AI at the moment, there's a bit of a fear fear-mongering going on with particularly the creative industries and what the implications of that. I'm really excited about what AI is going to bring for us from a data perspective. Enhanced data collection, as long as the data sources that are used are ethically sourced and obviously accurate, then our ability to innovate using AI, public engagement tools, visual platforms or virtual platforms for collaboration, the list goes on. And I think that's I'm very excited about how data is going to be able to be used to really elevate the importance of accountability within the marketing and comms industries.
Dan, thank you very much for your time today. I can't leave without asking you the question we want to ask all our valued guests is, what would be your top 3 practical advice for marketers to make a difference this year?
Okay, so the first one is brand clarity, right? So understanding who you are, what you stand for, how, and also how you're effectively communicating and working as a business, and what impact are you having right now, the status quo for that, and being true to yourselves and really looking at that, and that helps to develop a sense of self-awareness as a business or as a leader. The second thing is obviously purpose, having a higher purpose that helps to really unite and bring all key stakeholders together, that is around a common set of principles and ideals that can really inspire people, drive business, and innovate that business. And the last piece there is impact and becoming more measurable, and not looking at the normal metrics that we use to measure campaign effectiveness or communications, but going a little bit deeper and really helping clients and businesses to report on marketing in their sustainability reports. I think that's an inclusion which is missing, and I think that's something I would like to start seeing is particularly in sustainability reports, how ethics and principles are brought into the communications of businesses, and I think so impact, so brand clarity, purpose, and impact.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your time today. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you. I hope to be able to invite you back to another one of these, because there's a lot more we could go into. Please feel free to carry on the conversation on social. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Please get in touch if you'd like to know more about the squad and our planned activity. Join us next time for the next episode, where we will hear from another leading marketing expert around marketing and ESG, and we'll be getting perspectives from the media industry.
The Marketing Society Sustainability Squad podcast, leading the conversation on ESG.